Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Emmy Henley. I am the Managing Director of the Reform Alliance. We are a statewide nonprofit that is dedicated to ensuring every K-12 student in Arkansas has equal access to a world-class education. And we are joined by Dustin Wood, who is the State Director of School Choice and Parental Empowerment at the Department of Education. So I'm going to go ahead and let you start off with your slideshow presentation, and then we'll take questions at the end if that works for you.
Thank you very much, Amy. Absolutely. Like she said, my name is Dustin Wood. I am the State Director of School Choice and Parental Empowerment here at the Arkansas Department of Education. Born, raised, and educated in Arkansas. I was in Texas for the better part of 2 decades after law school, but I came back, and I'm happy to be back in my home state, serving my fellow Arkansans as best I can. And really excited about what we have so far as the opportunities that we have under the LEARNS Act. So with that, Spencer, we can pop on over to the next slide. So what is an EFA? It's an education freedom account. It provides 90% of the foundation funding per student per year. For 24-25, we're going to have just under $6,900. You can see there on the screen, it's $6,856. That'll be paid out quarterly or every 9 weeks throughout the school year. There are other states that have similar laws to Arkansas. However, Arkansas has decided, thankfully, under the leadership of our governor, to be the most aggressive when it comes to this kind of legislation, because we want every child to have all the opportunities that they possibly can. So in other states, you'll see situations like, oh, well, there's an income cap and things like that. The way that we've decided in Arkansas is that it's going to be rolled out over a 3-year process. This past year, the current year that we're in for 23-24 is the year 1 phase in of the LEARNS Act. This upcoming academic year, 24-25, is the phase 2 rollout of it. So this was, as the slide there indicates, it was created by the LEARNS Act that was passed last year during the regular session of the legislature. It is state administered. It is funding for education, can be used for approved costs, and it provides flexibility for those families to make the best choices for their children's education as they so see fit. So, Spencer, if you want to go to the next slide. So, we do have caps for the first and second year rollout of the EFA program. The first year was capped at around 7,000 students. The cap for the year 2 rollout is going to be about 14,000 students. Now, a lot of people have asked, and thoughtfully so, I can say, what happens if we get to 13,900 kids enrolled in the Education Freedom Account program? What is the state going to do then? Well, I'm not the legislature, but what I can say is that I think if we start approaching that cap for the year, I think the legislature would act. Although the cap for the first year was 7,000, we only got to around 5,300 or so students that first year. So even if every single kid who was in the year 1 of the EFA program came back for the second year, and remember, you'd have to assume that no one moved out of state or anything like that. Even if every single kid came back, we would still have a buffer of about 1,700 students that would be eligible for that second year, going up to that 14,000 year cap. So for the first year, we had a number of categories. The second year expands on those categories. So the categories are enrolling in kindergarten for the first time for the 24-25 school year. If the student had a disability identified under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This next bullet point is slightly slightly off. I'm sorry we didn't catch this previously. It really ought to say enrolled in an F or a D rated school for the prior academic year. So not just attended; they had to have actually been enrolled there.
Okay.
So just so we're keeping in with how the law actually reads. Attended a level 5 school district the prior year. The child of a law enforcement officer or first responder, also a firefighter. Um, the children of active duty military, veteran reservist, and I should also note here, also Arkansas Army National Guard. So if they are military connected, basically in any way, those students are going to be covered. If the child has ever been in foster care, is currently experiencing homelessness. Now, we do get a lot of questions on this homeless question. For instance, like, well, how do I show that I'm homeless? Well, if, for instance, over in Wynne, Arkansas, with the horrible tornado that struck there last year and took out so many homes, there are still a good number of those survivors who are living in FEMA trailers or who have subsidized housing through local hotels and motels and things like that. The schools specifically will have them coded under what's called a McKinney-Vento coding, and they can get a copy of their child's basically record, enrollment record, showing that they are coded as being coded as such under McKinney-Vento. Homeless, so far as McKinney-Vento is concerned, does not necessarily mean, a situation like sleeping in your car or under an overpass or something like that. So even if you are in a FEMA trailer or if you are having to be in a long-term hotel because of a natural disaster, those students are considered homeless. Um, Also, if your child was the recipient of a Succeed Scholarship previously, they will also be eligible. They're basically grandfathered in. Now, that's for the second year rollout that we are heading into, 24-25. And as the next bullet point indicates, in the year 3 rollout, the 25-26 school year, every student in the state of Arkansas will be eligible for an education freedom account. So the gates are going to bust wide open when it comes to year 3, and I can't wait to see what happens. Um, so Spencer, next slide. So what can education freedom account funds be used for? Of course, if you opt to send your child to a private school, so things like tuition, fees, testing, other expenses that they may have attending a private school, even things like uniforms at a private school can be covered by education freedom account funds. Instructional materials like books, curriculum, things like that, approved course and examination fees. So if your child, if you need to pay for him to he or she to take the ACT or something like that, the education freedom account funds can be used for those things. Tutoring services, approved educational devices, like I said, curriculum, transportation. Some students do need specified transportation, especially if they have a disability of some sort. Supplies, technology needs, other expenses approved by the Department of Education. I do want to add to this just one little thing that we've had questions about in case it comes up. So things like therapy services, if your child needs speech therapy. I was a speech therapy kid for 2 years when I was little. If your child needs occupational therapy, something like that, education freedom account funds can be used for those as well. So and like the bottom note says, the expansion is going to include kids that are homeschooled in micro schools, in learning pods, and situations like those. So education freedom account funds will be covering those folks as well. So Spencer, next slide. So getting paid. Well, the long and the short of it is we do not pay parents. And there's a reason for this. The reason is, number one, the accounting on the part of the state can get very, very, very messy. The other part is that if the state is sending money directly to parents, then we potentially could be in a situation where that becomes a reportable income event so far as IRS tax purposes. Now, I don't know about you, but I would rather pay less in taxes than more. So we want to avoid that as best we can. So just like I said earlier, those funds for the just under $6,900 are deposited quarterly into an account on our online platform. Um, then the parents or the guardians will receive an invoice from their private school, their education service providers, things like tutors, occupational therapists, what have you, or other vendors, things like if you're getting a uniform for your child, excuse me, allergies. Once you have that invoice, you will be able to upload that through the portal, and the state will pay those vendors, private schools, education service providers, what have you, directly. So the parents will never touch the money. And like it says, EFA accounts do not provide direct payment to families or reimbursements for things. So you'll need to make sure that you are using a vendor that's approved. We are in the process of moving to another platform. For this current academic year, we have used what's known as Class Wallet. That's what you see on the left side of the screen there, or the left side of the slide. That will be getting changed up in the next few months, and we are in the process of finalizing that. So, Spencer, next slide, if we could, please, sir. So, applying for an education freedom account. You do have to agree not to enroll full-time in a public school, so you're not double dipping. You can't say, oh, well, I need an education freedom account because I homeschool my kids, and then you're sending them to your local public school district or to a charter school. Meanwhile, you're trying to get money from an education freedom account as well. It's a one or the other kind of thing. You do have to agree to only use funds for qualifying purchases, and we will be looking. We want to make sure that we are being good stewards of the public dollars. You have to comply with all of the EFA requirements that are established by the rules. If you are going the homeschool route, you do have to say and agree that you're going to provide an education for the student in at least the four core subject matters: English, language arts, math, social studies, science. So, and that's written into the bill directly. So you got to agree to take care of things, basically. So next slide. Testing. This is a question we get asked quite a lot. In fact, I had 2 phone calls today from parents asking, what do we do? Where do we send them to get tested? Well, just if you take education freedom account funds, your student still does have to be tested. Now, it does not have to be the Arkansas Atlas test that's rolling out, but it does have to be any nationally recognized norm reference test that is approved by the Arkansas Department of Education. Without endorsing any kind of particular test, when I was working for my charter district in Texas, the norm reference test that we did for kind of spot checking where our kids were every year was the ITBS, the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. So that could be one that could be used. There are many others, however. So, and as previously said, those EFA funds can be used for testing costs. Now, what do you do with those test results? Those do have to be uploaded to the state. So now, if you don't want to test your kids, you don't have to apply. You don't have to get the funds. But if you take the money, them's the strings, to kind of put it mildly. So you will have to have your kiddos still tested. So Spencer, next slide. So phases of enrollment for 24-25. Renewals from 23-24, that is now open. That is in your online port. That's in your online account when you create it. There's a little plus sign up there in the upper right-hand corner. A question that we get rather frequently is, how do I reapply? Well, you don't have to reapply, you just have to let us know that you are going to continue for the next academic year in the EFA program. It's a pretty short, it's about a page and a half little online renewal form that you fill out and submit, so we know you're still going along in the EFA program. Uh, New applications, that is going to open on Monday, April 1st. It's right on top of us. And then what about approval of new applications? When will you know that your application has been approved? Well, we are having to wait on some rules to get finalized, but I can tell you that if you have all of your documentation in order and you send it up with your application materials, if everything is sorted out and good to go, uh, you will get an email say that you can anticipate final approval coming in June. All right. If things are not in order, we're going to ship it back to you. The example I give, and these sort of things have actually come up. So for, say, proof of residency, and you do have to be an Arkansas resident to get an education freedom account. For proof of residency, sometimes people would upload things like a copy of their Kroger Plus card, things like that. That doesn't show residency. There's Kroger's in lots of states. So just weird little things like that we would get through. So if someone supplies some material like that for their documentation that doesn't work, we'll send it back to them. Otherwise, you'll get an email saying you can anticipate final approval coming in June. So that's what that looks like. So Spencer, next slide. Milestones to look for. So the new rules covering the Education Freedom Account program. Those do have to go through a public comment period, and that by law does have to be open for 30 days so that everyone can chime in, everyone that wants to. And then the final approval of the rules, that does have to go before the State Board of Education and the Legislative Council, the LC. So both of those bodies have to give their stamp of approval on things. So that is why we say you can anticipate final approval in June. We cannot say you are approved. But like I said, if something's wrong with it, we're going to be sending it back to you, letting you know. So that's what that looks like. So Spencer, next slide. These are just the websites for us and for the Reform Alliance. And I just want to say real quick how thankful we are to Spencer and Amy and Lori and all of the work that they do over there. They are such a blessing to us, and we are so thankful every day that we get to interface with them and work on this. It is such an important issue. The education of our children in this state is so vital, and they put in so many selfless hours, and we really, really thank them. And I just wanted to say that publicly and know that it's being recorded for posterity's sake. But we really do appreciate those guys.
Well,
So
I thank you so much. That was very kind, and we are happy to do this. It makes us excited to know that children are going to have more options, especially with all the work that y'all's office is doing. Um so I think you did great, and I just want to jump straight into the questions because we got a lot of them. So
sure.
know that you covered the timeline for new applications to open for parents, but we also had some questions about providers. When will those applications open?
So for education service providers, we anticipate that being open probably within the next week or so. So if you are a tutor or an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, something like that, maybe you're an actual tutoring agency like Kumon or Sylvan or something like that, you'll be able to go in and submit your paperwork and your application to be approved to receive EFA funds.
Okay, fantastic. So around the same time.
Yes.
Do you have any sense of what qualifications will be needed for the learning service provider to become authorized or approved?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So clearly, if you're an occupational therapist or a speech therapist or something like that, you're going to have to show that you have an actual licensure in that. Now, when it comes to, let's say, tutors, that is going to be available for, of course, someone that has a current teaching license. It's also going to be available for retired teachers. Maybe they retired 2 years ago, and we can see their service history, but their licensure has since expired. We're going to still allow those people to tutor and receive EFA funds. If you have a degree, a bachelor's or even a master's in a subject area in which you're going to instruct or provide tutoring, uh, those people will be approved to receive EFA funds as well. I mean, if you've got a PhD in physics, I think you're probably qualified to be tutoring, a high schooler in physics, for example. Uh, Call me crazy. But we're also going to have a provision in that application such that if you can demonstrate some very specified knowledge or experience in a certain subject area, even if you don't have a degree, then on a case by case basis, we're going to look at that and see if you and look to see if we want to make you eligible to receive EFA funds. So the example, we give a couple examples of this. If you are Deion Sanders, you probably know a little bit about physical fitness and how the body moves and how the body works. So if Deion Sanders wanted to come to Arkansas and provide PE, physical education, to homeschool kids or something like that, we're going to approve Deion Sanders to come to Arkansas and receive those funds if that's just what he wants to do. If he wants to walk away from Colorado, go for it. Excuse me, about my stand here. The other example that we give is something like industrial education. So, say you have a neighbor or someone like that is a master woodworker and cabinet maker, and you want your 10th grader to have some industrial education. Well, your neighbor who has his own custom cabinetry shop and knows exactly how to do that would be able to apply to receive EFA funds for teaching woodworking and industrial education. So it's things like that. So we're if you don't have a degree, if you're not a retired teacher or a current teacher, something like that, we're still going to have venues for specialized subjects to be taught and receive EFA funds.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I know that you mentioned not using a Kroger card to prove your state residency, but what kind of documentation can families use to apply? And how do they provide it? Are they able to like take a photo and upload it as they fill out the application? How does that work?
So there's several different things that families can provide to show proof of residency. The easiest one for probably most people is going to be a copy of their driver's license, front and back. Other things that they can use will be something like a utility bill from the water company, gas company, electric company, what have you. Bank statement will also work, showing their address. Credit card statement would work too. Voter registration, property tax bill. If perhaps they just, they lost their driver's license or their state issued ID, they could provide their property tax bill. That would certainly show residency. And something that might be important for active duty military that perhaps they just got stationed in Arkansas and they don't have a new driver's license just yet. You can provide a copy of your lease agreement, even showing that you are leasing property in the state. So all of those methods can be used. All those pieces of documentation can be used to show residency in the state of Arkansas.
Okay, great. So you have some options there. Okay, so we did have a question about some of the approved vendors as they're going through this process. It says, will this affect my homeschool curriculum choices if my curriculum is not in the list of vendors can I still submit a receipt for reimbursement? So I know you mentioned that there won't be any reimbursement, but how will that work if they're not already listed?
So when it comes to curriculums, I mean, there's kind of two pieces there, so curriculum, we're not going to really dictate what curriculum you can use. Um, you if you want to use a faith-based curriculum, you can, things like that. So you're going to be able to choose the curriculum that you want. And hopefully they're going to, be on board to receive those EFA funds for you to be able to pay for it, but when it comes to tutoring, that's a different thing. When it comes to tutoring and education service providers, they're going to have to be approved by us before they can receive those EFA funds from the state. So it's kind of there's kind of two separate issues going on with that. So we're not going to dictate what curriculum that you have to use, but they're going to have to be we're going to have to be able to pay them. We're going to have to be able to get an invoice from them so that we can pay them.
Okay, so anyone providing curriculum would still have to sign up as a vendor in the marketplace in order to get the invoices processed.
Yeah, we're going to have those invoices. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, good to know. Um, so I think this one might actually be for our staff. It says you mentioned that qualifying students with a disability might also qualify for other programs. I think they were talking about the little asterisk at the bottom. So there is a second scholarship called the Philanthropic Investment in Arkansas Kids, where if your student has a disability that is identified under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, they can stack that on top of the education freedom accounts if you also qualify income-wise, which has to be 200% or below of the federal poverty guidelines, which for a family of four is $60,000. So our office is happy to go over all of that information with you. We can look at your income and let you know whether or not you qualify, or we can send you the qualifying information so you can take a look at it yourself. But yes, there is a second scholarship for students with disabilities, but it also has an income requirement. Now, the Education Freedom Account does not have anything to do with their income, correct?
Absolutely nothing to do with income. We are not looking at that. There are other states that go that route, but it is for the year one and year two rollout. It is strictly category based, and like I said, year three it is open to every state or every student in the state of Arkansas. There are no limits on any income whatsoever. If you're a household that makes $350,000 a year, you're in the one percenters, you can get an education freedom account. If you meet one of the categories that are applicable for year two, if you have a household income of $50,000, you're also eligible, so long as you meet one of those eligible categories. Yeah.
Okay, so just the eligible categories.
Right.
So you did mention that hopefully the rules will come out soon regarding the year two. Where would someone find the rules and the process in order to make any public comment?
So that would be on the website of the State Board of Education. That's where they would go to check up on that.
Okay, that was easy.
Yep.
Okay, and then the testing. How often does the testing have to be done? What happens if my student does not pass the norm reference test while in the EFA program? And are grades also a part of the reporting that they have to provide?
Grades, so let's take them in reverse order. Grades are not any part of the reporting that has to be supplied to the state. And it's only those homeschool kids that are going to have to report up, because of course, if you go to a private school, it's going to be the private school that reports up to the state as to how the student performed on that norm reference test. That norm reference test is going to have to be done once a year. So we anticipate that most people will follow a similar testing pattern and do that toward the end of the academic year, probably in May. I'm sure, we will have a date that says you must have your test results uploaded to the state by. But yeah, so once a year testing, and no grades, so far as like letter grades, need to be reported up. Now, when it comes to norm reference tests, um, it's really more of a performance metric. It's not so much of a, hey, you passed it, hey, you didn't kind of thing. It's more of a how did you do kind of situation. It's a fine distinction, but it's kind of a necessary one. So what we are going to be looking for at the Arkansas Department of Education is student progress. Are they doing about the same? Well, we hope that they're doing better. But if we get some longitudinal data over a few years and we see that, hey, this kid is actually doing worse over time, then we're going to have a conversation. We're going to say, hey, listen, let's talk about your student, about your kids, your child's, academic performance, because they've been in the EFA program for, 2, 3 years, and they're not doing better. In fact, they're doing worse. They're not even, holding steady, So, at that point, it'll be a conversation as to what needs to happen.
Okay, so it's not really a fail metric. They just have to show growth with the testing requirements. And then
Right.
if not, that's when the conversation will be had. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. If they're getting worse, we'll have a conversation. If they're staying the same, or if they're hopefully as intended showing progress and growth, there's no conversation to be had. The kid is doing better.
Okay, perfect. Um, this parent says, my child attends an F school, but we live in another district. Does he still qualify?
Yep, he qualifies. It is based upon the school in which the child is enrolled, not to where they are zoned to attend.
Okay, perfect. Um, when will we know what schools are available to participate with the EFA next year? Are those applications open for private schools yet?
Uh, yes, we are. We are. Well, very soon the application process for additional private schools will be coming open. I can tell you that when I looked at the list, I believe it was about a week and a half ago, there are currently 103, I believe 100, 203 private schools in the state of Arkansas that are participating in the EFA program. Just in this past week, I've had conversations with two additional private schools that are kind of small, that are looking to finalize their accreditation and all of these things so that they can be approved to receive education freedom account funds. So that list is going to be ever expanding. We had schools that were coming in the middle of last semester that they were getting their final stamp of approval done. And so those students could use their EFA funds for the schools that they were already attending. So um, so that hold on for me a second. Oh, applications for school. Apparently, they are open right now. I thought those would be coming up. Those are open right now. Excuse me. So that list will be ever expanding. There is a list on the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education website that lists all the currently approved schools. So
Okay, perfect. Well, we will definitely find that and include that in the email that we send out to everyone after this call.
one thing about that, let me say real quick before I forget. If you look at that list and you do not see your preferred school, um, what I would suggest is contact the private school, ask them if they intend to participate in the EFA program or not, and make, the decision that's best for your kid from there. So
Well, that's great. That kind of leads into the next question that I was going to ask. They said, if my child's private school is not approved, does this mean my child is not eligible for the EFA?
it
So,
does not, it does not mean that they're not eligible. It just means they cannot use those funds for that private school.
okay, but there's still time for schools to apply as well as, so the parents should apply if the school intends on applying to participate. So they really just need to check with that private school.
Absolutely. Yeah. If the, if you want to, you can go ahead and just go ahead and apply, anticipating that, that your school, intends to participate later. And, also you may change your mind. You may decide to go with a different private school. You may decide to homeschool your kid for a year, something like that. So you can certainly go ahead and apply. So just because the school is on the list does not mean you're not eligible.
Okay, so that's a great point. If you do change your mind, are you able to transfer the scholarship? What are there certain dates that you have to wait to transfer? What's the process like for that?
So most private schools prefer to take transfers around semester. It's going to vary from school to school, so you'll need to have a conversation with them about that. Um, but yes, you are able to, it's provided, you can gain enrollment. If you go from private school to private school, you can certainly change that over. If you go from private school to homeschool, you can do that as well.
Okay, great. So you can do that at any time. You don't necessarily have to wait for a semester.
Check with your private school and you're going to and make sure that they're going to take you outside of that particular kind of window.
Right.
Because
As long as you get the approval, you can change it. Okay. I just want to make sure. Um, so we do have a lot of questions about where to apply, both for families and providers. Do you have a link or a website that they can go to?
yes, we do. And just let me say, we're funding students, we're not funding systems. So those funds are going to follow the students around. We do have some links and information that we can send out after the call, so that they know exactly where to go to submit their applications and things like that. Like I said, it's not open yet. It opens on Monday, so we anticipate next week being a little crazy in the office. Um, as you can probably imagine. Um, but yes, we can send those links out after the call here.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we would love to provide those for people that sometimes they just want to be extra prepared
Sure.
before Monday. So they're not calling you for that, right? So we do have some more slightly specific questions. What forms will be needed for proof of parent veteran status? And then is it a DD 214? And then what if the parent is deceased?
Okay, so for military connected, so there's veterans, National Guard, active duty, and reserve. So for veterans, we're going to need your DD 214. All right. For active duty, we can take a copy of your orders, or we can take a copy of your leave and earning statement. Same for reservists. We can just look at you can send in a copy of your leave and earning statement, so that we can see that you are reservist. For National Guard members, if you are a National Guard member who has left a former National Guard member, excuse me, I should have said, if you're a former National Guard member who never deployed, you would not, and you were not, so you were not federally activated, you would not have a DD 214. You would have what's known as an NGB, National Guard Bureau, Form 22. So you would need to provide us with a copy of that. If you are currently in the Arkansas Air or Army National Guard, you could also provide a copy of your leave and earning statement. The child of a veteran, if the veteran has deceased, so long as we have a copy of their DD 214 as well, that child would still qualify. So there's a number of different things that we can get. Please just keep in mind that military identification cards are not supposed to be photocopied or scanned or anything like that and sent in. We were reminded of that. I was reminded of that recently by someone. It's a horrible story. I don't have to go into it. But he said, we have seen a number of copies of military identification cards come through our system. And that's a big no-no. So please don't do that. Please provide us with proof of your service in some other form or fashion.
Okay, good to know. I did not know that, so I will be sure to remind people if they ask. So we do have a question on the National Guard part. So they said only the Arkansas National Guard. My husband is stationed out of Wyoming, but we are full-time residents in Arkansas.
Ooh, that's a good one. So they are Arkansas residents,
Mhm.
but they are military connected. Uh,
Sounds
it
like from the question, they are National Guard out of Wyoming, but full-time Arkansas residents.
Okay. Well, they've got the residency component covered. Um, and we're not specifying Arkansas Guard. We're saying that that you have to be military connected. So it's the Arkansas part is the only part that is residency specific. So if they are Guard members in another state, then it would be a yes. Now, let me just point out real quick, the opposite would not hold true. So if you had someone, let's say, that was a member of the Arkansas Army National Guard, but was a resident of Texas, and there are a lot of those. We have a lot of National Guard members from Texas, Oklahoma, Shreveport, Memphis, that they are residents of other states, but they come in once a month to drill because we actually have a fantastic Arkansas Army National Guard here. The Arkansas Army National Guard is very highly regarded amongst the various state guards. Um, so the opposite would not be true if they are members of the Arkansas Guard, Air or Army, but they are residents in other states. They would not meet the residency requirement. They would not be eligible. And we've had some edge cases like that call in where they live on the Texas side of Texarkana, but they are, let's say, something like a first responder in Texarkana, Arkansas. Well, they're not Arkansas residents, so they wouldn't qualify.
Okay, so they have to make sure that they are Arkansas residents first and then go for the other qualifiers from there.
Right.
So we do have a question about some public school. You cannot fully enroll in public school, as you said, but what about if they take a few classes at a public charter school? It says my child takes 4 classes, electives like band.
Okay, so homeschool kids in the state of Arkansas can elect to retain their homeschool status, but essentially not fully enroll in a school. So we had a situation recently, a few months ago, with a third grader who was a homeschool student, but was taking a science class at their local public school, and I believe it is like I think it's a 1/6 kind of funding situation that we get into. So homeschoolers are still going to be allowed to do that. That's not going to impede their eligibility for an education freedom account.
Okay, great. I guess that would just kind of be on like a case by case basis as to how enrolled they are, or I guess the school would know that, right?
Well, yeah, the school would know that. But they are, just because you're a homeschool kid, you're still able to participate in extracurricular activities through your local school. Now, when it comes to specific classes and things like that, there's a funding metric. I believe it is a 1/6 situation. Um, per class. It's a like that. I'm my brain is a bit on the fence with exactly the fraction that it is at the moment. But yes, that's not going to impede them from still retaining that homeschool status or receiving. It's not going to impede home EFA eligibility either.
Okay, great. So we do have a lot of questions about using the EFA funds to pay for extracurricular type activities. So music instruction or sports participation, would these be allowable uses, assuming that the vendor could be approved?
So for situations, we're basically saying, if it is a required credit type situation, we're going to allow the funds to be used for that. Well, you do have to have a fine art credit in the state of Arkansas in order to graduate. So things like music instruction and things like that would be eligible. When it comes to sports uniforms for homeschool students, no, that would not be.
Okay. Let me see. So it says, what documentation will I need to submit to prove my child's disability?
Okay, so the easiest way to go about that is if your child already has an IEP, we can get a copy of that. That'd be the easiest way to go about it. However, if you're, let's say you're in a situation where you're a homeschool parent and your kid has an IDEA qualifying disability, but they've never been to a public school or a charter school or even a private school. So they don't have an IEP. What we would need would be some sort of diagnosis from a medical provider, saying that yes, they do have autism or they do have ADHD or something like that.
Okay, so as long as they're able to provide that diagnosis, then they can provide the letter for the student.
Correct.
Um, so this says we are a military family but have full legal guardianship of our grandson. Do I need to send in a copy of the guardianship papers along with the military information?
Um, yes. We that would be very handy if you are if you have guardianship over your grandson, just so that we are fully aware when we're reviewing the documentation. And one thing to note, I was just reminded, we do have a standardized form now. This is related to the prior question. We do have a standardized form for filling out by a diagnostician or a psychologist or a psychiatrist or what have you regarding a particular IDEA qualifying disability. So that's on our website. So far as the current question goes, yes, if you are if you're a military connected family and it's your grandchild that you have custody of, if you could provide us documentation regarding that custody order or what have you, that would be very helpful.
Okay, fantastic. Um, what happens if you are approved, but then you decide not to participate? For example, if your private school of choice doesn't participate in the program, or you just change your mind and you go back to public school, are there any penalties if you withdraw?
No, there are no penalties.
Great, that was so easy.
I like the easy ones.
Those are the best ones. Okay. Do retired law enforcement officers qualify for the EFA accounts? Um, And what about those that were honorably discharged due to injury?
Okay, so two questions there. So the what the categories are is for current law enforcement, current firefighters, current emergency medical emergency medical care providers, pre-hospital. Um, um, so former law enforcement, no, that's not going to qualify. Now, let's say that let's say that your spouse was law enforcement and was killed in the line of duty, then we will approve that. Let's say that you were a firefighter who was your child's mother or father was a firefighter who was killed in the line of duty. We will permit those. And I'm sorry, what was the latter half of your question there?
It says, or honorably discharged due to injury.
Well, that would be veteran status. So yes, we are
From
we are.
law enforcement?
Oh, honorably. I thought you meant honorably discharged from the military.
No, I think they were asking about a law enforcement officer.
Um, My understanding, let me double check on that and make sure. I don't want to say anything that is grossly incorrect. I have an inkling, but I want to double check before I give a solid answer on that.
That's no problem. We will definitely follow up on that. What kind of information do they need to provide if they are a first responder, law enforcement officer, firefighter. They also asked about a volunteer firefighter.
Hmm. Yes, we've had the discussion around volunteer firefighters because in many communities, that is the only fire department that is available, you know. So if they are volunteer firefighters, the answer would be yes. All right. Now, when it comes to things like first responders, firefighters, uh, uh, law enforcement, that's their full-time job. If you have an identification card from, that particular department, you can provide that. Similar to the military, you could also provide a copy of your most recent paycheck, pay stub, earning statement if you get a direct deposit, which probably most people do. Or we could even, if we got a letter from your HR department on letterhead, signed stating that you are employed, by that department. We could take that as well.
Okay, perfect. I think we have a few minutes. I want to ask a couple more questions. How does the testing work for children with developmental disabilities? Are there any exceptions for the testing?
Hmm. So that is one I'm going to have to circle back to again. I don't believe there are any exceptions regarding, I mean, if you take EFA funds, you have to do annual testing. I think that I think all of those tests have accommodations built in some way for those situations, but let's make absolutely certain of that.
Okay, yeah, because I know that they have some exceptions within like the public school system, and I believe it's some of our private schools. So we'll definitely follow up with you on that.
Those
And
exceptions are limited. I just got where there are exceptions, but they are limited. So.
okay, okay. So that would just be on a case by case basis, and they would check in with you all on what those exceptions would be.
Well, and certainly you're going to have situations where a child is so profoundly disabled, you
Mhm.
know, that that they're literally not capable of being tested, so there would be those instances.
Okay. Okay, and then one more, and then we'll just have you add anything that we may have missed. What happens to the unused funds at the end of the school year?
Okay, so basically what's going to happen is that you're going to have a cutoff date where if you don't use your funds, they're going to go back to the state. They're going to roll back up. So there was some discussion around that earlier on about how that was going to happen. But basically it's going to be hey, here's the date where things are, coming to an end. What we do anticipate happening is that, probably most people are not going to be in that situation. Some may, but probably most people are going to end up expending the funds that they have available to them. But those funds will be reabsorbed by the state if they are not used. One thing specifically about the funds return is only for 23, 24. Future years they will roll over. So going
Oh,
forward,
so
going forward.
this year they go back to the state, and then starting next school year, they'll roll over for families um up
Yeah,
until a certain point.
yes. They'll roll over going forward, but this year they do come back to the state. So
Okay.
one thing I wanted to mention real quick is that we've had some questions about what qualifies as a first responder.
Mhm.
And so the way that we are interpreting first responder is in your occupation, do you provide pre-hospital emergency medical care? That's how we're going about defining what a first responder is. So um, let's say that, so clearly, if you're an EMT, if you are a paramedic, um, let's say that a person was a flight nurse on a care flight helicopter transport, from a horrible accident or something, and that was their job. It is that pre-hospital emergency medical care. If you are a nurse or a doctor in the ER, that is not pre-hospital. That is in the hospital. So you are not, you will not, that person, those people would not fall under that category of being, a first responder like that. It is pre-hospital emergency medical care. That's how we're going about deciding who fits into that first responder category.
Okay, that's great. I know a lot of people have been asking about that. So thank you so much, Dustin, for joining us tonight and answering our questions. I'm sure we will do this again soon. I want to remind everybody that this will be recorded and we will upload it to our YouTube channel so you can watch again. I know that we still have a lot of questions that weren't answered. So we will do a follow-up. If your question was not answered, please be sure to fill out that survey and ask the question again so we can follow up with Dustin and his team and we'll get those answered for you. You can call our office at 501-244-9028, or you can email us at info@thereformalliance.org. And then is there anything else you'd like to say, Dustin, before we close it out?
Just thank you guys for being here. I see we've got a fantastic turnout, and we are here to help. I know it's kind of a comical phrase. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. But but we really are. And I just want to make it real clear for everybody. Our office is not in the business of telling you what you need to do so far as the education of your child. All that we want to do is provide the information that as best we can so that you can make the best choices for your kid going forward. It's not our job to tell you, what you should do. It's just here is the buffet of options that you have when it comes to your child's education, and you're their parent or guardian, you know best. And so if we can be of any help, we want to be an asset. We don't want to be a liability, and we don't want to stand in the way of you doing what's best for your kid.
Well, we 100% agree. We think that parents are the best deciders on that. And thank you again. And thank you all for joining us tonight. And we will see you guys again soon.
Thank you.